Oh no! Actually, they cut this down in the winter. So let's take the bark, sterilize it, and build something cool. I had all this gnarly tree bark, and I have seen bark used to make rocks and cliffs, so I decided to build a rocky outcropping with an orc watchtower on it. The bark was sterilized with boiling water and then dried in a low temperature oven. It should go without saying, but placing wood in the oven requires constant supervision. After awkwardly holding random pieces together and propping them in various configurations, I came up with a layout I was happy with, and started to assemble it with hot glue. The inner face of the bark is very porous, so the glue is easily able to make a strong bond. Once I had formed the two main halves of the cliff, I sealed the inside with PVA glue and a layer of tissue. I wanted to eventually have the entire piece sealed against moisture. I glued each half to a chipboard base. Oh yeah, I've always got an extra glue stick close at hand. It's good to have a healthy supply of hot glue. I have glue links in the description below, and links for some other tools and supplies, but mostly glue. These are Amazon affiliate links that help the channel to survive. I filled the middle gap with cardboard and foam to provide a solid foundation for the tower. Speaking of the tower, I need some junk to work with. Time to go on a quick shopping trip. Ink cartridges have some interesting detail hidden within. I'll put this aside for now, but apparently keep the ink on my hands. After roughing up the edges, I used these giant mega blocks to establish an approximate footprint for the structure. I made a few of my standard metal panels using a thin Mega Bloks piece filled with hot glue, covered in paper, and then weathered. I also made a few warped metal panels by squishing and bending strips of corrugated cardboard. Here's that ink cartridge again. I thought this would make a good door frame, so I just hollowed out a place for it in the foam base and glued it in. I prepared more Mega Bloks pieces by pruning the nubs off and filing some damage into the edges. I was able to get some interesting angled pieces from this old VHS cartridge. I built the walls up with various materials. Despite being a mishmash of many materials, one of my principles is to have repeating elements that tie the whole build together. I wanted a rounded element, so I built up this wonky pipe using a cardboard tube. The VHS case had an interesting rounded piece, so I incorporated that over the door frame. I'm not sure what this toy crate thing is, but it makes a good wall panel. I even found a use for some old keyboard keys. The top platform is one of the reels from inside of the VHS cassette. You may remember from my April haul video that I was sure I could use it as a tower platform. Getting into some finer detail here, I added some supports to the base of the wall using sloped Mega Bloks and plastic printer cartridge covers. This little viewport is made from the cap of a shampoo bottle. The rectangular opening makes a perfect bunker window. I add on more of the Mega Bloks panels to maintain some type of uniformity. These little foam hearts made perfect parapets. Now where could I find some good cardstock to create some smaller detail panels? No, not from Oats. These board game punch-out sheets are perfect. After using Spackle to fill every gap I could find, it was time to grind. I grind down all the spackle and rough edges. I also simulate flame torch cuts at the edge of some panels by grinding in a row of parallel lines. I do the messy grinding stage outdoors, and yes, it was snowing in May. Using the protective cover from a printer cartridge, some model car doors, and a plastic battery cover, I built a reinforced door. Using more bark and styrofoam bits, I built up a staircase. Then it was generously covered in watered down spackle. All of the bark was coated in thinned down PVA glue. And I can't help myself, I continue to add more details using board game cardstock. The tower floor is built up with cardstock. And then I built a trap door using scraps from the main door. I used the closure tabs from a plastic package of croissants as some patterned metal panels. And I used drywall tape and granny grating to add more floor detail. The base is detailed with a mix of sand and gravel. This patterned plastic piece also comes from a VHS tape. I make a staircase and retaining wall from cardstock scraps and Mega Bloks. Finally, I add rivet details using glass beads, gemstone stickers, and some drilled in detail using my new cheap pin vise. Link in description. And here is the completed build. Now this is before paint. Oh, it's been primed white. Oh, and secretly masked, off screen, with professional masking, and sprayed brown. I start with a rush over brush of my standard metal base, which is silver and brown. I mixed in a small amount of green to increase the contrast between the metal and the red paint, but I don't think it made a difference. I added more brown paint to the portion closest to the ground, and more silver to the higher areas as well as the stairs. Next comes a dark wash over all the metal. This is made from black ink, brown paint, acrylic medium, and flow improver. For the red, I mix some orange and brown with a dark red and then thin it with flow improver. I paint this into the center of every panel that will be red, leaving the metal edges exposed. I do several passes and use a mix of stippling and sketching to build up the very rough and deteriorated appearance. Then I add more orange into the mix to highlight the top edge of each red panel. I make a dark black with paint and ink and paint all the black panels in the same manner as the red. Using white, I pick out a few panels as highlights. I also sketch on the checkerboard pattern. It basically doesn't count as an orc thing unless it has the checker thing. sketch is a bit rough, but I clean it up with black paint afterwards. I make some primitive textured paint using baking soda and this glitter glue which has small hexagonal particles. I thought the particles would end up looking like scattered nuts and bolts, but they are so thin that they don't really leave a raised shape once painted. Oh well. A rusty wash is generously applied to the tower. I use a thin dark brown to add a dark tone to the bottom of all of the red panels, and also just for general weathering and aging. I make a wash using dark red and brown to begin tinting the rocks. Can we just appreciate how awesome this bark looks? It looks just like cracked and exposed layers of bedrock. So cool. Anyway, then I mix and apply this yellow tint, and I end up having a cliff made from mustard and jelly. It all gets a brown wash, and then a black wash. Credit goes to Mel the Terrain Tutor and or Luke's APS. I can't recall where I saw this technique first. I apply a cream colored highlight using this funny fan shaped brush, and then it's all done. You might be asking if it has enough DACA, and no, it doesn't. I will be building and adding a weapon to the top in a future video. I hope you enjoyed seeing this build come together. Leave me a comment and let me know what you thought of the project. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and ringing that bell. There will be many interesting and epic builds coming in the near future.